the second slide, I'll show you the major trends of migration. Yeah, this one saying Bimaru states. The one before that. Yeah, thanks a lot. So there's this term was coined. So Bimar means sick for those who understand Hindi and Urdu. So these are states: Bihar, BI, M for Madhya Pradesh, A Andhra, R Rajasthan, U for Uttar Pradesh. So these are considered the 6 states with lower economies. And so the ones in the red are the ones that have the outflow of migrant labor, and the ones in the green are which have the inflow of migrant labor. And so all these, the migration that has happened from these states in the red that you see, which are lower income states, is over 500,000 from each of these states. And that is the data from 2011. So it could well have doubled by now. We don't have any data or any proper predictions by now, but the from what epidemiologists and statisticians say, this number has doubled. So it's clearly 1 million plus from each of these states to the other states. So we are talking of a quantum of about 30 to 40 million workers who are stranded without food in different parts of India. And interestingly, as you'll see in the next slide, there seems to be an east-west divide in India as well, like the world. There's an east and there's a west, where west is more prosperous and east is the one sending out migrant labor. If you could please switch to the next slide, Iqbal. Right. So the red dots are all the major cities of India. Delhi in the north, the biggest dots, Delhi in the north, Bombay in the west. And as you can see, all the green areas are where the migration has happened. And these are 10,000 plus workers migrated to these places. So as you can see, the entire western belt is the hub of migrant labor. And this also is the hub of migrant politics, so to say, whether it is Delhi or it is Bombay or it's Gujarat or Punjab, all these western states have often been anti-migration rhetoric, that these people are eating into the resources and so on and so forth. And now the governments of these places do not want these migrant labor to go back home because the industries are run by them. So it's across party lines. It's not just the ruling party, which is BJP, which has said this. The Congress party has said this in Delhi. The Aam Aadmi party, which is the incumbent in Delhi, has said this. The Maharashtra Navnirman Sena's politics and Shiv Sena's politics in Maharashtra has been about migrant labor. So clearly there's an east-west divide in India as well. The west is traditionally the port cities like Bombay and Surat. The east is all the mineral-rich areas like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. This is where all the bauxite, where all the iron ore is, and which is where the poorest people are, where all the tribals are. So it reflects the macro world scenario of the east-west divide as well, strangely coincidentally. And so if you can move to the next slide, you'll see very quickly the actual numbers in these big cities. And in fact, a Congress member of parliament is going to the court about Trump's visit to India, because Trump came to India in the last week of February. And even though there have been attempts to communalize this issue in terms of Islam, as it always is across the world, but we see that all the hotspots in India are where Trump went, which is Ahmedabad, Delhi, and Agra. So he went with a cohort of 200 or 300 people, lakhs, hundreds of thousands of people to welcome him everywhere, and there was a lot of mingling of people. And this is when India's statistics in terms of COVID was only about 20 people when Trump arrived. And now we know that these three cities where he went are the most affected, and the prime minister's home state is one of the most affected as well. So of course, you can see this data later, and we have classified everything into red, orange, and green zones. So you can see that wherever these migrant labor forces are, that is where the red zones are, which is all the industrial hubs, all the big cities is where the red zones are, which is where people have come from abroad, and it's the rich people's disease. It was brought by um, Indians who live abroad, and it's basically the migrant labor who's having to pay a huge price. So in the next slides, you'll see that a few visuals from the kind of images that we have. And every day we have hundreds of such images which are very disturbing and moving. People walking home for thousands of kilometers. This is a scene from Delhi. This person is walking 1,000 kilometers back home to Uttar Pradesh. People walking with little children, old mothers, and all sorts of things. And here you can see the next slide, what a mockery of social distancing it has been with whatever opportunity was available to people. They crowded in buses and trains, and this could well have led to a very widespread spread of the virus. And there was no other way than what you see in this image. And I personally saw when I was going to drop a colleague, the situation at the bus stations and the railway stations. And so after this, the country went into a lockdown. And after this, the migrant workers have been walking home. Now they're trying to arrange trains, but the state governments are willing to let these workers go. In riots in several places, as you'll see in the next slide, in Kerala, in Gujarat, where out of hunger, people have rioted with the police. And this is the last slide, the long march. You can see that this is an everyday scene almost. And we don't have exact data on how many people have died just walking or of hunger. Obviously, no government would like to share that kind of data. But the NGOs working in this area, NGOs working to provide food to them, do have some kind of picture. Maybe in a couple of months, we'll have a much clearer picture of how many people actually perished just walking home. So that's that for now, I think. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Amit. That was very interesting. Also very tragic. I mean, just to see how this is sort of unfolding in India. But I appreciate you sharing with us. And next week, we'll also have Amit on a special panel focusing on South Asia. So scholars from India and Pakistan to talk about different aspects of the coronavirus. So hopefully you can join us for that, inshallah, too. So now what I want to do is I just want to open it up to everybody. So everybody can sort of, if anyone has any questions or sort of wanted to ask about the presentations or had perspectives to share with us, it's open discussion for anybody. So I think almost everyone is on mute right now. So you should have the capacity to unmute yourself and then just ask the question.
Iqbal, I got a question for Amit.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Amit, I just returned from India about a week before the lockdown. One of the two issues, currently I'm in touch with my family in India on a daily basis. Liquor shop, and you see what the mayhem has happened all over the country with the liquor. No social distancing, and people who did not have money for food, they're standing in the line. The second question about migration. Most of the people who work in labor force in Mumbai and Delhi, they all went back to villages to be close to family. And there is a fear in business community, they may not even come back. How that happen? What is your opinion about that? If that labor force does not come back to Mumbai, Indore, or all these big cities, Surat, where they depend on their thing, how would it affect their GDP and the businesses?
Yeah, thanks a lot for that question. These are the burning issues of India right now. First, to the liquor shops. The government has nearly gone bankrupt. I wouldn't again be able to translate it in billions, but 3 to 4,000 crore is the daily expenditure to feed people if only government feeds them. Thankfully, there are lots of non-governmental organizations feeding them as well. And so already Indian economy was in a very bad shape before the virus struck. And so the only way to kind of get revenue is liquor. The government has risked it in many places. And there have been long serpentine lines with zero social distancing. And they've earned a lot of money in just the last couple of days. So it's a way to get an economic somehow revival through liquor. So some states like Odisha, where I am, the chief minister has been very wise to not open it. Some states have also gone online for liquor delivery. They're so cash strapped that liquor is the only way to bail the country out. It seems it's a strange situation. In terms of migrant labor, it's sort of poetic justice that the minimum wage here is close to $5 a day for 8 hours of work, and even that the Madhya Pradesh government is doing away with now. And so finally, these industrial economies and capitalist economies are realizing the value of labor, which has been so undervalued. And which is why these governments like Karnataka are stopping the labor from going back home. But the whole thing is that unless there is food security, unless there is social security, how does this labor force go back to work? If the government cannot promise them a minimum guarantee of at least being well fed so that they can do their manual labor. This is a very tricky situation, how the economy will jumpstart. And also poetic justice in the sense that all these states that I mentioned, they have all been on a tirade against migrant labor, saying they are pressure on their healthcare systems, a pressure on their economic systems. And now we are knowing very clearly that they are the backbone of all these economies. And so the politics of the last 20 years, not just in India, but across the world, where migrant labor has been at the receiving end of states' vilification. Finally, everybody is getting to realize the value of labor.
I have a question, Amit. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. My reflections on the conditions of the coronavirus on the side of my own discipline is the question of how effective the central governments all over the world are in dealing with these issues, either in terms of controlling the population or feeding the population, and also the capacity of the governments to avoid bad publicities. Looking at India in the last couple of months, especially, I was quite struck by the degree to which the state was able to control the flow of information, and not only the control of people. So I don't know exactly how it happened, but for such a huge country or continent to be controlled by centralized states and the military in terms of flow of information and also flow of people and images was quite remarkable, actually, especially for those of us who are from the outside watching in. Very few countries, even China, were able to do the same thing. Am I mistaken with that, or do I miss something?
Thanks a lot, Professor Misbah. You're quite correct. Even within India, they're able to control the flow of information quite a bit, except that we still do have alternative media sites. And a large portion of people looking for information are going now to these alternative media sites like The Wire, The Scroll, and most important, journalists have gone on social media rather than in the mainstream media. But the mainstream media, as we have seen in the last few years, have been sort of towing the government line, and so much so that very few of these news channels show the plight of migrant workers, and instead the government showered rose petals to helicopters and hospitals to show solidarity with doctors, which is quite a morbid sense of celebration, because we are in the middle of the battle. If that kind of money would have been spent on bailing out migrant labor, that would have been much useful. So So your point is very well taken, except for maybe BBC's Hindi channel, which is doing some work on the ground, and also because of the a very sort of effective lockdown imposed by the state, journalists are not able to freely move around, and most news channels aren't really committed to journalism uh, anymore. And also in Bombay, you'd be surprised to know that around 100 journalists have been infected by COVID. So those who were on the field are also afraid to go on field now. So the mainstream news channels, which have the government support, are having a field day.
All right. Do we have any other questions for any of the panelists?
Amit, what do you think about Arnab Goswami?
What is there to think about him? He concocted a case of violence against himself by none other than Sonia Gandhi, the opposition leader. So he's up to his melodrama. He's not getting enough attention, so he's doing some of those antics now. And the court heard his case, the same day, whereas the court is not willing to. The Supreme Court is not willing to hear the migrant labor case until the situation is in control. So the Supreme Court trusts the government's discretion when it comes to feeding the people, but that is very willing to hear Arnab Goswami's case the same day, which is an utterly inconsequential case.
I have a couple of questions one for Edward and one for Alisa too, if I can go.
Please.
Is that okay? For Edward, what is liberal about the art? Actually, I mean, what do you mean by that? Do you take in the definition of liberal from what is known in the Western tradition, or you take it into sort of a filter of local cultures when they say liberal? And I footnote this with practical development of two institutions, one in California, close to Berkeley, called Zaytuna College, which was basically established philosophically based on the necessity of having a liberal Islamic art college in the United States. And then more recently, the Cambridge College, which was created in the city of Cambridge, maybe more or less with the same thing in mind. I'm not 100% sure about the Cambridge College. So there is, and this is interesting analogy between liberal sense of art and science, sometimes with the past imagery of the Andalusia and the heyday of the Islamic culture, freedoms, and so on. I was just wondering, where do you get this notion of liberal / new culture in China? And what are the filters of the notion of liberal? And then I have a questions for Ali, then I will ask later.
So, in China, actually, this is the very traditional Chinese way of sorting disciplines into different categories in China. So basically, we have science and liberal arts in China. And liberal arts include actually...
Your sound system is not good.
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit.
What about now?
Yeah, now it's better.
It's better. Maybe come closer.
I mean, the liberal arts.
Start again.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the liberal arts is actually a traditional way for the Chinese people to sort all the disciplines in China. And basically in China, we sort all the disciplines into two different categories. One is called liberal arts and the other one is called science.
Yeah.
So the liberal arts actually include humanities, social sciences, and actually economies. So this is probably different from how you sort all the disciplines here in the United States. So in China, it's just a sort of Chinese tradition. Did you
is a complete replication of the Western approach towards categorization of art when you say liberal, or there's anything particularly Chinese about it or traditional about it?
Well, actually, maybe we have different understanding of liberal arts. For Chinese people, if I gave the definition of liberal arts nowadays in China, actually it has nothing to do with liberal. It's just the name.
Okay.
But the spirit, actually sometimes we're losing all the liberal spirits of liberal arts.
Okay.
And the reason behind that is very complicated. So that's the different understanding. For me, in this article that I wrote, it's just the name of a category, how we sort all the disciplines in China.
Okay. All right.
That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. I have questions for Ali. If he's still there, I don't know whether he's gone or.
Yeah, he's here.
Right there. Okay. I mentioned this to you before once because we had almost not the same, but a dynamic of the blending of the I would say the loyal subjects of the Tsarist Russia's Muslim population when they developed a combination of modernity and their own cultural traditions. And they established something called the Jadidi movement, which was a hugely intellectual and political, and later on even maybe radical at some level, well connected with the Muslim world, actually. In other words, the Jadidi movement in the Russian Empire was heavily influenced by the movement which started by Jamaluddin Afghani and Abdul, and the connection between the two, between Iran and then Egypt and Russia. So I don't know if that parallel is interesting for you or it has any relevance to your work or not, but I just wanted to bring it up again to see how large empires with a different type of cultural domination, how the Muslims population actually dealt with this domination and hegemony. At one level, you had people who were never accepted any sort of blending, if you will, maybe in the North Caucasus especially, and sometimes in Central Asia in the Basmachi movements. But the others with intellectual orientations actually started coming to terms with imperial domination and hegemony, with presenting a different vision of themselves by first criticizing their own tradition, by saying that we have to change and go along with new modernity and so on. And therefore the word Jadidi means the new started. And then they're presenting Islam in its proper orientations and proper manifestation, compatible with the modern time. This happens in Russia and has a huge significant ramification even until today, which separates, for example, Tatarstan in Russia from Chechnya. Chechnya is still dominated in some fundamental respect by the rejectionist approach, if you will. But Tatarstan is actually more accommodating and still, in many ways, more intellectualized approach towards Islam. So that's an interesting parallel, perhaps, for your work. But I was wondering if there is such a parallel exists in your presentation of the third culture argument when it comes to living for ethnic Chinese who are Muslims, but they live in a larger hegemonic environment of Chinese culture.
So yeah, Professor Sao.
Thank you, Professor Musbaghi, your comments and the question. I think this is a very complicated question because Hui nationality, I think, is more different because before Qing Dynasty, Hui nationality have no chance, have no opportunity to go out to abroad. And because of the new cultural movement, Hui Muslim have opportunity to go abroad. But I think their destination focused on Egypt and Turkish.
Mm.
I don't think they have the opportunity to go out to the Middle Asian. And because Chinese Hui Muslim has very strong communication with Egypt and Turkish and Persian. But at that time, because Hui Muslim no money and their knowledge is very weak. So I think the most influence of them is at first they have to influenced by Chinese culture. And at that time, because Egypt has another education movement, I think all of the Islam world influenced by West world. So, but I think your opinions give me strong new concept about what the third culture means. I think all my just focused on Egypt and Turkish and Persian.
I think it's interesting. I don't know whether your research could communicate in some level with Edward's research, because the original responses of the Jadidi movement came from the responses towards modernity by Jamaluddin Afghani. And then the Afghani movements who led to the Egyptian reforms by his disciples like Abdul and others. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, now we can mute your microphone.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was trying to see if there is actually a connection, although very remote, with the concept of modernity and how the Muslims in the last 2 centuries have reacted to the notion of modern. Whether that modern is completely localized, coming from the state, in this respects, whatever modernity meant for China as a whole, and then Muslims are responding to that. And the same thing for Russia. Russia has always been engaged with the enigma of modernity. And Muslims population were also involved in somehow reacting to what the hegemonic cultures around them reacted to the Western modernity. And if you look at the Middle East and South Asia, and then expanded to the west side to Egypt, this huge crisis of modernity and Islam in late 17th century and 18th century, which somehow prompts somebody like Jamaluddin Afghani to start questioning the problem that the Muslims have in terms of the crisis of authority and the crisis of domination by the Western countries as a problem of Islam coming to terms with modernity, and whether Islam has basically forgotten its past and its culture. So when you talk about Egyptians' influence itself is also affected by what I'm talking about in terms of late 17th century and 18th century, sort of not anti-modern, but coping with modernity as a challenge of modernity, both its political dimension, which is colonialism, but also its cultural dominations and science dominations and so on. So maybe that's why I asked Edward, what do you mean by liberal? And then therefore, for him, it seems to me, or for China, it seems to me liberal is just a label for categorization. It really doesn't have any maybe cultural or even epistemological, if you will, dimension. And I thought maybe somewhere you both have to deal with that notion. And so when you talk about third way or third culture, what is the third part means, you know? So anyway, that was my interventions. Thank you. If you want to comment on that.
Thank you, Professor. I really appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Tao.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Professor.
Okay. All right. Professor Misbahi, do you have any questions for any of the other panelists? I wanted to ask Professor Wang Su, you know, she has gone back to China. What was one of the main what was a major impact that coming to America had on you in terms of your experience and your sort of educational journey? Professor Wang Su? Yeah, hey. Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you, what was, kind of an important, what did you learn from your time in America? This was the first time that you had come here, you had met people from all over the world, you interviewed people in the Muslim community. What were some perspectives that you got from that?
I stay in Miami, American, just 5 months, but I gained a lot of experience in there. And when I follow the class with Professor Yu and Professor Muhammad Musbah, I learned a lot of different study methods and in class, and I touch a different field of the knowledge I never heard before in China, and I feeling very pity. I lost this chance and opportunity to experience more and more, which I can't experience in China because I was very surprised for American education levels is very high. And in China, I want to say China is very very great country because we have the population is very large, more than 20 doubles than American. But in this large population, how to development every families and every different field workers to make the great develop in different fields. It should be lost some persons benefit, just like in American you have the liberty, and it means the freedom for a lot of things. You can do what you want to do, but it's not mean you will have the good life in this environment country. But still, I really feel thanks for this opportunity to gain a lot of knowledge and to know how to group myself knowledge levels in future.
Okay, no, thank you so much. I mean, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask the same question of just briefly for those of you who are also here. So Sana is here, Sue is here, Ghanem is here. Just kind of, can you give us just a general sense of how being in America, what is your experience, what is your perspective, and how has it changed how you see things?
You want me to go first, as always?
Go ahead, yeah.
I think the most important thing that I've learned here in America is the self-growth, this immense self-growth that I have experienced. Like, I got the opportunity to learn more about myself, and also how can I better connect with people. I think this is the biggest gift that America has given me. Also meeting with scholars like you, and then scholars from different fields of life, like Amir, Dr. Carlos, all Edward Tao, everyone, Professor Muhyiddin, Dr. Iqbal, everyone has immensely added to my knowledge, and I love that. I love learning from different people, and I think America gave me the opportunity to learn from all of these people's perspective, and to increase to my knowledge in a really incredible way. And I am really grateful that I came here and I learned so much, and about myself and about everyone, about the culture. So yes, I feel like a different person, like a totally not very learned, but you know, like a little bit learned. I mean, not your level, but still. Yeah. And I miss you, Aisha. You taught me a lot about Chinese culture. Yeah.
Well, for me, I think the city of Miami, I think the biggest feature is the diversity of Miami, and I think this is also a keyword in how to say, in my impression of the of America, of the country. I think this country is full of respect for diversities, so it's tolerance enough for everything. And especially Miami, because here is in Miami, you can experience a combination of different cultures, including the Southern American cultures. So the experience here, I gotta say, it's phenomenal for me, especially the education that I experienced. It's totally different from China. You know that I was brought up in China, and for the first more than 20, actually 30 years, right? For the first 30 years of my life, I was in China, and I was experiencing Chinese, very typical Chinese education. But here in America, the experience is totally different. And it just opened my eyes, my horizon, and my mind. So this is really, it's beyond my imagination. And what I want to say, what I want to emphasize is actually the personalities of all the professors here. You know, Professor Musbahi, Professor Iqbal, Professor Carlos. These are all amazing persons, and they are very charming. They are always, you know, always there whenever you need any help. They are always, you know, always willing to help you. This really impressed me a lot, and I really want to say thank you here. Thank you all.
You didn't meet Amit, did you, Edward? Amit is like that. You didn't meet Amit, right? You weren't?
I met Amit. Actually, Amit was the one who wants to pick me up in the airport with Tao.
Oh.
So, and I gotta say, Amit, you know, Amit impressed me a lot, and he's actually the first Indian people that I've ever met in my life. You know, so you know how important he is for me to know about India.
Out of 1.3 billion people.
Yeah, that's a big country.
Yeah.
But you also have to understand that our experience and also learning from you guys.
Absolutely.
You learned from us?
We've learned so much, I think.
You should not underestimate the richness of the experience, of the encounter, how I don't know how limited or how extensive has been with you guys. It's not just one-way street, has never been one-way street, and it shouldn't be one-way street. Because unless there is an equality of learning, which comes fundamentally from affection and amity, there is always will be a danger of hegemonic understanding of each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's something that, you know, should be avoided in all exchanges. You know, you have to be open to that. So that's why these exchanges are so incredible, not just on purely academic matters, but also in terms of the humanity part of it, which is itself is a different category, but it's such an important supplementary component to the idea of exchange. Because I think hospitality is fundamental to exchange.
Yeah.
And hospitality, the origin of hospitality is amazing. It's still an enigma why we like each other as human beings. It's an incredible story, actually, if you think about it. And when you lose it, the consequences are very significant. Very significant. So thank you for being here and give us the opportunity to know you.
It's been a great honor just to work with you and to be connected. And I mean, you know, Professor Rajab, who, you know, connected us all with the Chinese scholars, Fulbright scholars, you know, Gita has been instrumental in just really internationalizing the university, I think, and just providing this space for scholars from all over the world to be able to come and to connect with each other. I mean, it has really been, honestly, FIU is like an amazing place for me. And it's really kind of one of the best places to have this sort of interchange. And it's a place that's not pretentious, you know, so we don't think too highly of ourselves, and we're open to listening and thinking and connecting with people as humans and as equals. And I think that's something important. So I'm gonna turn it over to Professor Carlos, who will hopefully give us some concluding remarks before we close out the session.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, I'm not offering any grand speech or anything, but I really would like to thank you guys individually and collectively for this wonderful experience that we all shared this year. It was a special year, I think, for all of us. And it ended in a very unique way. So it's kind of, the whole thing was rather miraculous, I think. The fortuitous collection of all of you guys from all around the world and all of the experiences that we were able to share. I think it's easy to take for granted how miraculous such a gathering is, just from a historical perspective. I mean, 100 years ago, to gather scholars from Pakistan and China and Myanmar into an American university would have taken immense logistical pains. It would have, you know, required arduous ocean journeys and telegrams, and then getting all of it to happen would have required a sort of commonality of aims that would have been, that's rare at that time. But now, of course, we kind of forget how amazing it is that we can have scholars from all around the world gather here at an American university. Programs like the Fulbright Fellowship offer a logistical framework for these exchanges, and FIU and the Mohsen and Fawzia Jaffer Center offer a home and a focus for our scholars' activities. And in this sense, it's made possible because all of our societies, both the society that we live in here in Miami and our home society, they all value this kind of exchange in their own individual way. So from a historical perspective, one of the reasons we're here is because, you know, the world has been getting more closely knit together for the last 500 or 600 years. You know, this is a technological change, and it's a sort of global social change. We all are sort of getting closer to each other. It's a process that began when, you know, Chinese sailors explored the Indian Ocean and traders from India, you know, traveled to the Mediterranean, and Europeans began to discover the New World. So this is part of the process that we're benefiting from now. But nothing. So that's one way in which this gathering is amazing and miraculous. But another way is, you know, the great surprise that we've been faced with over the last few months, this global pandemic. And it made what you guys have been able to do, you know, even more amazing. The last few months have seen our world, you know, transform in so many ways, shift into a kind of virtual world. And a lot of, and our visiting scholars, you know, who all came here to learn from each other in person and to learn from American society in person, are now forced indoors into this kind of virtual society. And this is a tremendous challenge in which sort of all connections were transformed into virtual connections. So it's to our scholars it's to our scholars great credit that they were able to take these disorienting circumstances and turn them into an opportunity for learning. I mean, this is quite remarkable that we were able to capitalize on all of this. And the credit belongs to our scholars themselves, to all of you. What could have been a crisis that paralyzed research, you know, became the opposite. We all met weekly on Zoom, and we made all kinds of interdisciplinary connections, a lot of them related to the COVID crisis itself. In a way, the COVID crisis sort of leveled us and removed barriers between our interactions. So it taught us in a very profound way the essence of scholarship and the essence of also interpersonal and intercultural connection, and not just scholarly connection. So it's the scholars themselves who face these strange times and work diligently to produce their own lasting works of scholarship that, you know, deserve immense thanks. So I'd like to thank all of them that presented. Sana Abbasi for her innovative research into an underappreciated aspect of language learning. Chiang Yang for his comparative assessment of strategies for liberal arts education reform. Wang Song for her analysis of the Arab American community in South Florida. Ma Tang for his linguistic analysis of rumor making during the COVID crisis. Su Tao for introducing me and many others to Hui cultural movement in the early 20th century. Su Tadar for her work on Qigong among the ill in South Florida, and Amit Ranjan on the social consequences of the COVID crisis for India. So each of you guys deserve to be proud of what you've accomplished. And speaking for Dr. Akhtar and Dr. Misbahi and Chandra Whitehead and many other members of the FIU community, we're all we have to thank you guys for what you've offered our lives as well. We have had a very interesting time and a very interesting and very educational year because of what you've brought us. So that's I think all I have to say. If anybody else would like to add any other remarks.
Thank you, Carlos. Just a quick question. When is our next class commencing?
Next class. Next time you're down here.
For me, guys, I would like to thank everyone's really for the great things that we have done within the last 6 or 7 months. I believe that I learned a lot from all of you guys, especially Carlos, Dr. Misbahi, Akbal. You added a lot, really, you added a lot for us. And even I can feel that I am totally different person after 6 or 7 months here, and I can see a lot of developments. Although I studied in different universities, then I started my career in business and international development and the strategies. So then I came back after more than 10 years back to the academic field, which I believe it is a great experience. And also I would like to thank Sana, Tao, and Aisha, and Emmett, and Edward, because I really learned a lot from them. And also I can see a big change. Sana, in the beginning, she was very shy. Now she's developed a lot.
Oh, I wasn't shy. It was just some family problems.
From the first time I met you, Tao, he was, his work was very limited. Now he is adding a lot to us. Being with Amit and hanging out with him, it was a great experience. I would like to thank you all, guys. And also a special thanks for Gita. She's the one which she was working behind the scenes and connecting me and others to all the other scholars and the faculties and student associations. Big thanks for all you guys.
Thank you, Anim. Thank you, Anim.
Thank you. Yeah, we're hoping that we'll eventually meet in person before you all leave. Again, I want to thank again Professor Chandra for guiding all of the scholars, for providing the structure to think and to write. I mean, that is such a valuable thing for so many of us. And I don't know, it's really wonderful. I think this, honestly, to be honest, I think this was my best year at FIU. Just to have you as scholars and to develop a community and to connect with each other, to share food, to listen to lectures. We've developed such a wonderful scholarly community and we've become friends. And I think that's just a wonderful thing. So I really appreciate your friendship, and I hope that this is something that will last for our lifetimes. And we'll always connect with each other, help each other, share things with each other, wherever we are in the world.
Inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. And anyone else have anything to say before we?
Can I have 1 minute?
Where's Tao? Tao didn't say anything.
Okay, Professor.
I want to say, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I want to say thank you to all of you. I think everyone's each experience is you cannot replaceable, especially my experience in Miami. I feel the far culture here, feel the power of knowledge, feeling the world here. My vision become open because of my experience in Miami. I feel the immigrations from Latin culture. I know who is Che Guevara before I come here. I think who is Che Guevara, yeah, become more and more interesting to me. And the most important thing I feel is my own shortcomings, especially in the pandemic, to let the world become more and more close today. I think Miami's diversity may provide us with the relationship of the people, regardless who you are, whoever the color, the skin, the language, the religion, we should be respect each other. I remember at the first beginning I come to Miami, the hurricane come here. I have no idea about what it means. Professor Musbaghi called me every day. Ali, take care, take care. I don't know what it means. And today, I think I see Miami in extremely, completely different light. So all the hurricanes, Spanish, Cuba, food, all of you, all of these things will be memories forever. I want to say thank you for all of you. Thank you so much.
I hope you won't experience a hurricane, so get out.
I will buy a lot of food. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Oh, you don't say, there's another August.
Yeah, of course. I usually comes in late August, September, so so for the year, yeah, inshallah, we'll not have it. On top of Corona, we will not have a hurricane. No, I think this is great. I want to thank Iqbal specifically because he has been such a hub for these things happening, and so he has been incredible contribution. Years ago when I tried to establish the Jaffer Center, I had doubts that given my health, maybe I shouldn't do this, but now I realize this was worth it. So inshallah, we'll see you all again in different occasions, and maybe we can create a network of people who are visiting the Jaffer Center and also FIU as a continuous network, intellectual network and human network for the long time to come, and have a occasional Zoom meetings regardless of the Corona or not, wherever you are.
Absolutely. Anyone else have anything to say? All right. So I just wanted to thank you all again for taking the time. I know it's been 3 hours, and some of you it's midnight already in your countries, but it's been an honor and a pleasure. Again, thank you, Dr. Wang, as well, for coming, attending us from China, for all of you all over the world that joined us, connected us, and to learn from you. And it's really been an honor and a pleasure. So I hope to see you all soon, and wish you all well sort of on your intellectual and journeys throughout the world. Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.